Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Laing. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Laing.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty, everyone. It's a nice Friday morning here in Henderson, Nevada. We're kind of covering both sides of the country, aren't we, Regal?
Sure.
My guest today is Regal Naseef. She's calling in from Maine. And tell us what town you live in exactly.
It's called Scarborough, about 15, 20 minutes south of Portland, Maine.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you being here this morning, Regal. I'm excited to talk about our topic, or you are the expert, and we're doing some exciting things together as part of our consulting firm, Certainty Management. So you have the distinction of being the second guest next to Victoria Foster, who is actually from the Certainty team. We haven't had a lot of our team members on the call. So you're in good company with you and Victoria, the two powerhouse women of our team, two of the many, but really appreciate you being here.
Liz deal is kind of a big deal too. I'm going to just throw it right out there.
Absolutely. We put you three together, and Jill McCauley and Gabrielle Taub and Sue Laing. I mean, I think the women are leading the pack here at Certainty, but
well, what's not to like? Right.
Exactly.
In that group.
So we always start the show out, if you've been listening, if you're new to the Finding Certainty family, but I always start the show out by sharing a couple of reasons why I've invited this specific guest to be with us. And in Regal's case, it really comes down to two main things. Number one, she is a consummate fundraiser, grant writer, nonprofit advocate. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about her background and how she really has led the way in the state of Maine and in the Northeast in her fundraising efforts and what she's done to help various organizations. She has some amazing stories that we'll dig into throughout this session. The second piece, though, is Regal is a great example of someone who is reinventing herself as an entrepreneur, having worked in corporate America, worked for nonprofits and other things over the last many years, how she is making that transition to being her own boss. And I think she's a great example of someone who maybe doesn't have years and years of sales experience, doesn't have years of business ownership experience, but she is tackling that challenge and doing an amazing job at it. And I'm so proud of you, Regal. We're very, very honored to have you on our team and seeing everything you are learning and becoming and so forth. So let's jump into it. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks for taking your time. You're not up as early as I am. I know it's about noon out there in Maine, but why don't we start by just telling us a little bit about yourself? Tell us where you grew up and your family background. Obviously, we've got a lot to cover, so we better do this in sound bites. But tell us a little bit about who is Regal Naseef, and your legal name is actually Lisa, but you go by Regal. So I think we need to talk about that a little bit.
Regal is a derivative of my last name, which was Regalman. So one day I was walking down the hall in high school, and my girlfriend said, "Hey, Regal," like the guys call each other by their last name in the locker room. Well, she coined it, and then everybody just called me that for the rest of my life.
That's great.
That's why I named my company Regal Resource Development, so that, it used the derivative of my last name. But basically, I grew up mostly in upstate New York, born at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. My father was in the Air Force. My father, extremely funny. My mother, extremely smart. She was one of the first and only women in a small group to get into Cornell in her day at a young age. And hence she pushed me ahead in school a little bit. But I'll say this, I thought I was pretty dumb. I really did. Most of my childhood, I thought that I really was not that smart. And that is partly because I have an older brother and a younger sister, and I am a middle child, and shout out to all you middle children out there who get ignored. Okay, I feel you. But they both are what I would classify or call genius level in specific fields. My brother was a math genius, and my sister was a linguistics genius. She speaks multiple languages fluently. And I was just sort of in the middle without any one specific thing, that I did well. And that feeling like I just didn't have my identity yet or what I felt special or purposeful with. So my mother was very smart, as I keep saying, and she sat me down one day when I was really frustrated by this. And she taught me about the 7 forms of intelligence. So I'm just telling you this so it might help somebody else out there listening. I would recommend you do this with your middle school or teenagers. She did this with me, and I literally got up from that table and I felt like a different person. She said there's artistic intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, spatial intelligence. It's not just mathematical or academic or, so you have kind of more of the pieces of the pie in some ways, relational intelligence or social intelligence, but yet you're not sort of at the edge of one of those pieces of the pie is kind of what she taught me. So
interesting.
It really was life-changing. And the other thing you should know about my childhood, and that'll be that, and then we'll get into my old age now, which is like the country song says, I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. Getting back to my childhood, I was an exchange student to Paris when I was 15 years old. So I'm over there and I'm extremely frustrated that I can't speak French fluently. And I'm just I'm dreaming in French, but I'm not really saying things right. As a matter of fact, I got story after story, but I went to the Louvre. They were all working and they dropped me off to just walk around the Louvre, one of the greatest museums in the world by myself. And I'm walking around and there was a young guard there and I said, okay, I got to speak French. I got to do it right. So I walked up to him and I said, excusez-moi, monsieur, pouvez-vous me voir en exhibition? And he said, attendez un moment. And he said, wait a minute. And he left and I waited there. I thought I did something wrong. And he brought all the other young guards, the young men, back to that same spot. And he said, dites encore, say it again. And I said, excusez-moi, monsieur, pouvez-vous me voir en exhibition? I wanted to know where the exhibition was, the special exhibition, the art exhibition is what we call it in English. And they all were roaring with laughter. And he said, do you know what you asked me? And I said, no. And he said, you asked me to take my clothes off. He said, give me an exposition, like take your clothes off. So I tell the story. This is how dumb I thought I was, like I just couldn't get anything right. And so basically, when I was very, very shy in school, and you're not going to believe this, Patrick, you're going to go, shut the front door. There's just no way you were shy. I was extremely shy, and I would never raise my hand in school. I would never speak in class, ever. I wouldn't do it. I would never talk. As a matter of fact, my mother went to a conference and the teacher said, oh, you're the mother of the daughter that never speaks. That's what it was. But at 15, I'm in Paris and I'm frustrated. I can't speak my voice. So on the airplane flying home from Paris to New York, it was where I grew up in upstate New York. On the airplane, I made a decision. I am going to change my personality. That's it. I don't want to be this way anymore. I got off the airplane and my mother said, I haven't shut up since. I just tell stories. I talk. I'm the first to speak. I was a corporate trainer and teaching presentation skills to corporate managers all over the country. What a change. And I just made a decision to do it. So
wow.
That's
a great story.
Me.
That says a lot about you, Regal, because, you're as I've gotten to know you, you're this really unique combination, in my opinion, of a great conversationalist, and yet you're also humble. You're not overbearing, you're not boisterous or in your face, but you're just really good at conversating and sharing stories and connecting with people. I think you've transitioned, from that shy girl to a confident woman, and yet you've still retained some of that humility and some of that, etiquette and so forth that a lot of people don't have. So
well, because I had many years of
my assessment.
Many years of lower self-esteem will do that. Will do that to you. But I did take a course in miracles, Marianne Williamson's work. I did take it, and basically it's about the elimination of ego, actually.
Wow.
And I've been actually spending decades trying to do that. I will have to say I have not succeeded. I don't think you can really remove your ego completely. I think you have to have some ego in order to kind of function. But I've certainly reduced the need for me to deal with, talk about myself. I really just like to help other people is really where my headspace is at.
Well, that was the first thing that jumped out at me about you. We were introduced through a mutual friend, a friend who is involved in the anti-sex trafficking industry. And we were introduced to her through Operation Underground Railroad, who we're big fans of. And I got to know, I just got a message from this lady I didn't know. We referred to her by OUR, and she said, "You've got to meet Regal Naseef. This is the lady you need to meet if you want to do good and do work in the nonprofit arena." I think she said she's the man. But at the time, I understood what she was saying. She said she's the bomb, I think is what she said. So let's talk about, let's jump ahead into your professional career, because this first little segment before our break, we always focus on you, and then we take a little break, and then we're going to get into what you do and how you do it. And but let's talk about this transition. I don't know if you knew this, but my mom was born at Wright-Patterson Field as well. You guys have that in common.
Oh my goodness. I knew I loved her. Okay. All right.
So where'd you go to college, and how did you get into your career, and how did it evolve?
So because of my mother pushing us ahead in school, and so I had to follow the geniuses and didn't want to be following the geniuses. I was 16 years old when I was finishing high school, and my father got corporate transfer across the country. And for all those millennials listening, we didn't have video chat or cell phones. I couldn't afford a flight. So I've basically been living on my own since I was 16. And it was kind of like the movie Flashdance, where you sort of live in a warehouse without furniture. I did that the last summer before I drove myself to college. I went to Ithaca College, by the way, and I had to pick my major at 15, which was not easy to figure out who you are and what you want to do at 15, but I did. Right. I was at the time a television, radio, film major, and ended up working at WGBH, where Sesame Street is produced and that kind of stuff. But so here I am at 16, and it was about the middle of my senior year, and my dad said, they're going to announce where I get transferred pretty soon by December, and I'm going to have to go immediately. And he said, you all come with me. And, and I said, Dad, I've only got a half a year left. I put my hand out to shake his. I go, it's been really nice being raised by you, but I think this is the end of the road. And I just lived alone pretty much, the rest of that time, and then drove myself to college. So it was scary. I didn't see my family for more than about a week a year until I was an older adult.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Incredible.
Basically, I know.
Another thing you have in common with Sue is she left high school early. She jokes that she's a high school dropout that went on to become a college instructor. She's a high school dropout with a master's degree, but she left early because she was just bored. She was ready to get on with her life, and so.
Oh, I know. So I had this dream. So this is an important piece because apparently I'm intuitive and I didn't know it. And I have this dream and it's so real that I went to school and I told all my friends, well, my dad is moving to Wisconsin. And that's it. We had spaghetti last night. He told us he's moving to Wisconsin and I'm going to stay here by myself. And they were all like, wow, that's incredible. And then, so that afternoon I came home, I told my mom, yeah, when Dad came home last night and he said when we had spaghetti and we're moving to Wisconsin. And she said, honey, we didn't have spaghetti last night. He didn't say we're moving to Wisconsin. We don't know where we're moving yet. You told all your friends that? You go back and tell them that you lied. I go, well, no, it happened. It actually happened. And she said, that was a dream. So we let it go. And a couple weeks later, my father came home. We had some other chicken for dinner. And he said, I got my assignment. We're moving to Minnesota. And my mother and I just looked at each other. There's 50 states. We ran to an atlas and she goes, you, my dear, are a borderline psychic. That's how powerful that dream was. She said, the Minnesota Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota is on the Wisconsin, Minnesota border.
Yeah.
So, and I just had the dream and there's 50 states and that's where we were going. Whoa.
You got very close. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we've got about 2 minutes till break. So tell us in 60 seconds your professional career leading up to fundraising. We'll talk in the next section more about.
Yeah, I know. So I basically got a bachelor's and a master's. I was too young to drink. So I was afraid to get a corporate job and not be able to drink with everybody and tell everybody. So my advisor gave me the best advice of my life. She said, stay one more year and get a master's degree and just get it done now so that I could be old enough to drink when I went to work.
Don't know if that's the best reason to get a master's degree, but okay. Whatever works, right?
She said, later the baby will be crying and you'll have a mortgage. And she said, do it now. That's what she said.
That's good advice.
So that's how I ended up with that. And my master's is in organizational development, which really has helped me a lot and played out in a lot of the work that I've done.
I bet it has. Well, we're visiting with Regal Naseef. She's the owner of Regal Resource Development and is an expert in fundraising, in grant writing, and really she's been a nonprofit advocate for many, many years, 25 plus years now. And so when we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit about what she's doing to help nonprofits, some of the stories experiences she's had, which are extraordinary, and what she's doing today. So thanks for being with us, Regal. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Patrick.
We will be right back.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business.
You're listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show. at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty. If you are a new listener, we encourage you to go back and listen to past episodes as well. Our entire theme here is about how business, nonprofits, and all of us, in order to thrive, we need to be willing to change. We need to be willing to evolve and consider new approaches, new relationships, new technologies. And most importantly, we need to work together to do that. Our guest today, Regal Naseef, is a great example of that. She's a phenomenal collaborator and advocate and really becoming a phenomenal business owner, using all of her experience and applying some new skills, learning some new things. I've just been really impressed. So, Regal, thanks again for being here. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Me too.
So we talked a little bit about your upbringing and your college years. You started college really early. You have some similarities to my own mom, as I was telling you. And if you're on the YouTube video, you can hear some of the dialogue we have in between the breaks. But we were talking a little bit more about that while we were waiting to come back. But let's get into how you got into nonprofit work, because you started as a corporate. I mean, you worked as a corporate trainer in some other areas. So let's talk about that transition now and what you are recognized as an expert.
Okay. There was a delay, so I had to wait and make sure you were done there. I think what I'm going to answer with that is my why. I ask people in every business meeting I say, what's your charity of choice and what's your why? I always want, that's my go-to question. So since I moved around to different places where I didn't have any family and friends, in many cases as a very small child, but then older, I would be in towns where I didn't know a single soul, kind of thing. I moved to Maine, and I found myself with my second pregnancy, which is a temporary condition because it's 9 months, right?
Right.
Well, for me, it was quite a life-changing, traumatic pregnancy. It's my second son. And I had a condition that only 10% of pregnant women have. It's called hyperemesis gravidorum. And it is torturous nausea, not morning sickness. It's all the time. And it really, it's at that level. It's just really difficult. I didn't want to take any medicines for it because, I thought that would hurt the baby. So I thought I was just going to have to suffer through it, kind of thing. And it led me to ketosis, which is where your body eats its own muscle mass. And I basically was dying like somebody in a developing country who can't eat would die. So I've experienced what I call near death. My family might think I'm exaggerating, but I was written up in a local newspaper as the worst pregnancy in the state that they knew about, because
Really?
I had to borrow a cane from a 94-year-old neighbor of mine to walk around. And then I was in a wheelchair for about 6 months. And that was from sciatic nerve damage. So I was basically dying. I hired a lawyer to write my will and testament. And I thought, I don't think I'm gonna make it, because, this is pretty much it. So having that experience, I had to hire a nurse to take care of me. I didn't have any friends and family in Maine. So there was really not a lot of support. And I want to tell you, because you are such an expert at sales, and I've learned so much from you, my favorite sales story in history that I've ever heard. I was walking with the cane in order to get donations for charities of a hot tub place. And I still remember the guy's name because it's been 20 some odd, 30 years. And I was in pain. I was nauseous. My face, I was gaunt, was losing weight, pregnant. And I walked in with the cane up to the desk to get the donation. And he said, "Oh, no, 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 no." He said, "You're doing this for charity as a volunteer." I said, "Yeah, we just need a donation of a hot tub certificate." And he says, "No, I'm going to give you the hot tub certificate, but I'm also going to give you a hot tub." I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "I want you to call your doctor. It's going to be dropped off on a forklift. Give me your address right now, tomorrow. And I need you to check with your doctor to set it at, what's the body temperature, 98.6 or whatever it is,
Yep.
to make sure that it's not too hot, of course. And I want you to use it for hydrotherapy. You're in I was screaming in pain walking to his desk. I mean, I was really having trouble. So he said, "And that's it. And that just during your pregnancy, I want you to have it. And then it's just really nice to meet you, what you're doing for charity." I couldn't believe it. So the forklift came, the hot tub got dropped off, 5 hours a day of hydrotherapy. He saved my life because I was trying to tough it out on my own. He saved my life. And guess who bought a hot tub at the end of 9 months? Right?
I'm sure you did, right?
I bought it from him. Of course I did. And I said to him, that was the kindest, most heroic sales gesture about giving first in order to make a sale that I have ever seen. So I just wanted to share that with the expert on sales. I'm sure you have a million
story.
more like that. So basically,
question real quick.
That's my why. That's my why of why I got into nonprofits. And I immediately went to a teenage homeless pregnancy shelter, and I volunteered my services of writing and raising money and advocating and getting donations. And that's my mentor. She's in her late 80s. That's Dawn Dagenhart, who founded Maine Adoption Placement Service and had a shelter for teenage pregnant girls. And she's still my mentor today. She has been to the White House with Maya Angelou and Paul Newman, winning the Caring Award, America's Caring Award. And she opened up Russian adoption in the United States for the first time. She, like your mom, I wanted to share this, has 9 adopted children of all races from different countries that she raised. And it's very much reminded me of your family, Patrick, the Laing family. And you can explain what that means. And so I really resonated with you and your family when I heard that.
That's really neat. Regal says that because I have a sister who's adopted from Korea and a brother from Samoa. We have lots of nieces and nephews. My sister's husband is Black, so you can imagine our family picture looks like the colors of Benetton or the United Nations. And it was a great way to grow up, and I'm very grateful for it. But so back to this story real quick, and then we want to jump ahead before we run out of time to talk about what you do on a daily basis. But what was it about that man's gesture that you think created this cathartic effect for you, this epiphany or paradigm shift or whatever it was that occurred in your life? Because I think thousands of people have benefited now because of that man's one act of kindness.
Oh, isn't that a nice thing to say? Yeah, I just thought, okay, I get it now. You're just here to help others. You're just here to give to others who are in need and in pain, because I was in real pain. And look at the difference in my life that a salesman made. That's not a psychologist. That's not a doctor. The doctors couldn't help me because I was, pregnant. There was nothing anybody could do. And a salesman saved my life. So I thought, well, I'm not a doctor or I'm not a lawyer, but maybe I can save one person's life or make a difference. So I'll tell you what it did. I was so driven to help people in pain, particularly pregnant women at that time, that in a year, I raised $1 million to open up a shelter that was needed in the community. And I drove those girls to the methadone clinic, to get off of drugs. And I decorated their houses, and I was the first person to hand them the keys. And I just found my purpose. And I need to tell you about one business meeting. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. I think that most of the time I'm a very kind person. Kindness I value very highly as a virtue. But when it comes to charity, I become ruthless. I become extremely bold. And I think it has to do with that cellular memory of almost dying. I actually feel the fear again. These people are going to die without your help. And I start to get just very passionate. So I was in a banker's meeting, and everybody's in a blue suit in those days on a high level overlooking the ocean and all the stuff. And I needed to get the down payment for the shelter because newborn babies were coming out of the hospital in Maine without the little caps that they needed on their head just to go to the car seat. Okay.
Right.
And I had gone to the hospital with car seats for the babies, and all the stuff. So I get in there and I make the ask, is what we call it in my profession. I make the ask, and the lead banker, he says, no, we only make our decisions from January to March. And it's, and we already have our charity of choice this year, maybe in a couple years, we'll talk again. You can come back and have a, presentation with us. And I was prepared, Patrick. I'll tell you what, I mean, I know you're not, maybe you won't believe this story, but I was prepared. And I I said, I'm going to do what I did to him. I kind of left the seat. I said, excuse me for one moment. And so I took the no. I said, oh, okay, I understand. I took the no. And then I left my seat and I walked around the corner while I had a woman, one of my homeless girls, with her newborn baby named Jason in her carriage. And I walked back into the banker's meeting with a baby, a homeless, newborn, about 10-week-old baby. And I'm telling you, I'm ruthless. And I put the baby on the lead banker's lap. I started probably crying a little bit or tearing up. And I said, sir, I need your help. And boy, did that room change. Nobody could talk. Nobody could talk. And he just said, all right, that's it. And he threw the papers up and he said, I'm changing the rules. This is ridiculous. We're the biggest bank in this town. We need to help this shelter. These kids need a place to live. I just became a grandfather. I will not stand for this. And he said, give her $100,000. Give that woman $100,000 and you go buy that property now. And you put our name on it. You put the bank helped you do it. And I went, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for saving all these babies and all these girls' lives. And that's how I got started.
What a great story, Regal. It's interesting. I was just talking the other night about, I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting. They had asked me to come speak, and it was a ribbon cutting for a friend. And afterwards we were talking about, I can't remember how we got on the topic, but we were talking about missionary work and how I served a mission for my church in Italy for a couple of years. They were talking about how they've known several, AS missionaries over the years and what a great experience it was and how they seem to change. Missionaries who go and serve, I don't know, it doesn't matter what religion you are. If you do ministry work, it changes you almost on a cellular level. You come back a different person. Yeah. And then we talked about how, and I said, I believe this is why. I said, most of our life, we're focused on our job and our family and our career and or our schooling. And when you serve, when you're, whether as a missionary or it could be as a nonprofit development director or a volunteer, or, you look outward, you're focused on everything but yourself. And I think that's why most missionaries, at least from my church, will say it was the best 2 years of their life. You'll hear others just rave about their missionary experience in Africa or South America or Mexico or whatever. And it's not only does it change you and you come back differently, but I think it gets in your system and you want more of it.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought
it's
that
addictive,
up.
right?
I'm so glad because my first boss was a minister. I have clients who are pastors. I tend to be drawn to this for some reason. And then when I met you, veteran owned, I love the fact that you served our nation in the Army. And then I loved that you were a missionary because my mentor that I told you about, I have to admit something else here, I guess, and be a little bit transparent. I grew up without any religious training, none, zero. I never celebrated Christmas till I was, I think, 32. I never had Christmas. There was no religious training at all. And so I'm kind of like a babe in that area. I'm kind of a seeker. And I had cultural traditions. Don't get me wrong. I had cultural ethnic traditions, but I didn't have any religious training. I am a very spiritual person, and I've kind of come to it on my own, which I think is actually more special because I've come for it to be the truth by myself without anybody telling me that it was the truth.
Very
right?
genuine. Very
It's really from my own knowing and my own experiences in life. And this is funny because I've always wanted to tell you this. When I was at work one day and I had visited an orphanage in Kosovo after the genocide in Kosovo, 1999, 2000. Yeah, I'd visited there, and my boss, my mentor that I told you about at that shelter, who did international adoption, she said, give this money to the orphanage and help them get going. And this little girl came running up to me and she said, Mama, Mama. And she came and ran into my arms, and I thought I was going to die because I'm an old soul empath. And I thought I was going to have to take her home with me, and they wouldn't let me. And I fought for it, by the way, but they wouldn't let me. So I came back home, and my mentor said to me, Regal, you do realize that you're a missionary, right? You're spreading a message. You always do this. Wherever you go, whatever you do, you're a missionary. And I said, what is that? I'll admit it. I was in my late 20s, and I said, I don't even know what that is, because I'd never been inside of any kind of a church before. I didn't know what it was. So she said, well, it's what you do, and it's who you are. The only difference is you're not particularly spreading a message of one particular religion, but you are spreading the same message. You are spreading. And I said, wow. I mean, I learned something. That's why she's my mentor, Right. So I thank you for saying it, because I didn't know that I was one, but I guess I act like one.
There's a lot of different kinds of messengers, right? I call you an advocate, which is a great description of you. But your message was that if we serve others, we can make a difference. We can make an impact. We can change lives. And we're up against our next break. But when we come back, I want you to just share one or two examples of other groups you've helped. I know the refugees you've worked with, and the children's choir. And I mean, you've had some really neat experiences. You just had a great experience with the Patriots at Gillette Stadium. And so let's come back. It's time for our next break, but we're visiting with Regal Naseef. We'll be right back, and we'll continue the conversation.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, T-E-A-M, like Mary.com.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at certaintyteam.com. That's certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Thanks for staying with us, everybody. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us and following along in this journey that we call Finding Certainty. You know, as we throughout our careers and our businesses, our marriages, our parenting, we're all seeking that goal in our lives, right? To have more certainty, to know who we are, where we're going, how we're going to get there. You know, I think most of us want to make an impact. We want to leave a legacy. And that's what the show's about. Regal Naseef, who's our guest today, is a great example of that. She's spent the last 25 years helping nonprofits and those in need to get over the hump, right? To get to accomplish more and to be able to have a better quality of life. And Regal, as you and I have gotten to know each other, I keep hearing more and more stories of groups you've helped and the kind of impact you've had. So do you mind just taking maybe 60 seconds each, because we still have a lot to cover, but talk about your refugee work, talk about the girls that you worked with that went and sang. They had some pretty extraordinary performances. And then maybe wrap up with your friend's work with the anti-sex trafficking. I think that you should do a shout out because you just had a big win with her just this last fall. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Mind covering those three?
Well, their successes are my only successes. It's their work and in the charity and the nonprofit world. By the way, the word fundraising is kind of a negative word, and philanthropy means love of human beings, and I would add animals to that. And it's really about giving to others and all of that. And they do all the hard work in the social sector, we like to call it. But
good point.
The one client is his name is Con Fulham. He's a songwriter, producer, director, Emmy award-winning, nominated, all these great things. And he walked into my office one day about 15 years ago, and he was running on fumes. He wasn't getting any pay. He was just volunteering to help a group of mostly Central African and Middle Eastern refugee girls who had resettled. And he named the chorus Pisintu, which is a Passamaquoddy word that means when she sings, her voice carries far, because they had really lost their voice coming from war-torn villages into, frankly, almost all white state, the state of Maine. And these were African girls. And so they had to go to school and fit in and, they just get their voice back. And so he said, I'm running on fumes. That's all I can tell you. Well, so it's about 12 or 15 years later, and we've raised $500,000 together, and we do the work together, of course. And they were on the Today Show. They sang in front of one of the presidents. They've been to the White House. They sing at the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. They are the featured video on the United Nations High Commission for Refugees,
Wow. That's amazing.
They just recently performed with Yo-Yo Ma, and Bono gave them from U2 band, he gave them a standing ovation next to the president of Ireland recently.
That's fantastic.
And they are it's been an amazing journey with him and with their chorus and their songs. So
I know, Regal, that you've done a great deal of work with refugees. That's if there's an area that's maybe close to your heart. You've fostered children. You've worked with kids. You have quote unquote adopted kids that you've given opportunities and helped them go to college. And I mean, that's such an area of need. There's a nonprofit here in Vegas that I work with that's called Lighthouse Charities that does a lot of great work with refugees. And I can't even imagine being uprooted from your land and dropped into a state where nobody looks like you, and you may not speak the language. You've got to learn new customs, and you're worried about getting deported. I mean, it's such a traumatic, I think, just a challenging experience. And you and people like you are saying, welcome, let me help you. This is a melting pot. This is the land of the free. We want to welcome you. You're trying to come here and create a new life. Let us help you. And, it just warms my heart, Regal, to know that there are those out there like yourself that are trying to help with that transition, because it's so important. I know there's a lot of political divide over immigration and the protecting the borders and so forth. But every time I drive through Wyoming or somewhere, or even Nevada, anywhere you drive through, you see all this empty land. You think, we've got a lot of space here, right? We have a lot of opportunity, a lot of resources. Why don't we open it up and make it possible for people to start over? Because good people want to come here and contribute. It's not all just criminals and reprobates, right? As much as the talking heads might try to say that.
This is all legal immigration, of course, and this is all, the enrichment. I mean, I get the best food. They come and they set up a restaurant, and I get the best food. It's just incredible. From Afghan, or from Afghanistan, or from all the different countries that have come over. I mean, I just love what they bring and how they enrich the culture and the community. But I'll tell you what, it is an at-risk community. And they tend to not, like, their parents can't really fill out an application after school. So they tend to not be able to be involved in after school activities, and they tend to not graduate from high school. There's a very high dropout rate. So get this, the chorus for 15 years, 400 or 500 girls that are going through it, they have a 100% graduation rate. It is unheard of. It is unheard of. That is the impact of what this nonprofit did, and I could support them.
That's really
so
neat.
I'm just happy that I was able to do that. And the other one was, I was at a gala, and I saw the story of a woman who was sex trafficked from a young age, and she escaped it. She got out of it. With the grace of God in her eyes and her experience. And I just approached her and said, is there any way I can use my skills and abilities? I raise money for nonprofits. Can I help you? She wasn't getting any pay. And I said, I just want to donate my time, because this is a really important thing that you're doing, preventing children from sexual exploitation. Right. Boys and girls, by the way. And, 1 in 5 children have been sexually exploited. You learn a lot as a grant writer doing all this research, and it's just unacceptable to me. And I said, so, on weekends, I had a full-time job, but what can I do? And she and I worked together, and it was slow at first, trying to kind of find the right way. And one day I found out about the New England Patriots Foundation had a particular grant. Myra Kraft was one of the most generous women. Robert Kraft is the owner of the Patriots. She was just an amazing woman in the New England region, what she did and the generosity there. And there was called the Myra Kraft MVP Community Service Award, somebody volunteering to do something impactful. And I thought of my friend, the executive director of Stop Trafficking Us, Catherine Ann Wilson. I said, I'm nominating her. I was going to surprise her and not even tell her I was nominating her, but I think I might have said, I might need to check if I'm getting this all right, But I filled it out, and sure enough, a couple months later, I get a phone call from the New England Patriots, and I'm crying, and she's crying, and she wins. And we literally had we like to call ourselves young, but 2 young gray-haired grandmothers driving to Gillette Stadium to meet Robert Kraft and an NFL Hall of Famer to be given a huge check on the stadium field, you know. And
That's
we're
so
kind of
cool.
looking at each other. Is this real? Is this really? Did this happen? And so she gets the check. And so that's money for her conference. But then she met with a U.S. senator. She was invited to the White House after that to be on a panel to prevent sex trafficking. And she then told me that there was a federal earmark grant, and could I write that for her? And she won $300,000 a couple months ago for every year. And I got to tell you, for a nonprofit leader who's been running on fumes, I keep saying, that is an incredible gift to have sustainable funding for multiple years to do the work that you do. I wish that upon everyone.
You know, it would take us probably 10 more episodes to talk about all you've accomplished in the last 25 years, Regal. I mean, you were voted as one of the 20 outstanding women in Maine. You've raised funds for the Stephen King Foundation. You're now a part of American Club Association and running their ACA Cares program, which is a national program for nonprofits. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And now you're working with us here at Certainty Management.
And what is the saying that you have? That's really what drew me to you about what your model is. I just love it.
Well, I almost get choked up thinking about it. You know, what we realized, and we're running out of time, but we realized that we could do more than just make income. We could make a difference. We could do more than just do business. We could do good, right? I was talking with a group of entrepreneurs the last week or 2 weeks ago, and I said, we all want to make income, but we really want to make a difference. We want to leave a legacy. You have most certainly done that, and you continue to do that. Now, through our work here at Certainty Management, you know, we can help nonprofits raise unlimited funding at zero cost to them, right? We don't even charge them for our work. Obviously, you get paid as a grant writer, which is a very specialized skill, but you also work with us in the ways that we can to help nonprofits raise funding. So anyone who's listening, if you know a nonprofit who needs funding, we know it's the number one need for most nonprofits. The more funding they have, the more good they can do. If you know them, send them our way. Look at the details in the episode description. Reach out to us, reach out to Regal, and we can help. So in the last minute, anything we missed? Any last parting thoughts? And then we've got to wrap up.
My favorite quote is Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
I love that. You know, 100 years ago, Helen Keller, even with her disabilities, being blind and mute and deaf, right?
Yep.
She was still able to make a difference. So don't think you don't have the ability. Anyone can make a difference if they just try. I mean, you actually served in a similar role as she did 100 years later, working in with the blind community there in Maine. It's another great story. But again, we're out of time. But appreciate you listening today to Finding Certainty, guys. Share it with your friends. Tell others that we're here. We've got a great message. We have great guests. Regal, thanks for being here today. You're a great example of the quality of the guests we're having here on Finding Certainty, and just a fantastic team member as part of our team. Just keep on keeping on. You're doing a great job, and we're so proud of you.
I think I'm the biggest fan of this show that there is. Every single week, I call the person who is on the show, and I'm doing business with them, by the way, every single week. I love them all.
Wow, that's great. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend and enjoy. And we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Finding Certainty. We hope you've gained some more insight into how to create more certainty in your own business or nonprofit. Join us next week for another taste of the Certainty Experience. Until then, we wish you greater certainty in all that you do.